Hi, I'm Mark Edwards, and welcome to Musical Differences, a podcast, a conversation, a chat between friends who will discuss their musical interests, their musical obsessions, and their musical differences too. In this episode, I'm joined by Ed Kenny, an old friend and work colleague with whom I have enjoyed many years of musical appreciation and discovery. Sit back and enjoy. Anyway, Ed, I'm going to start with a quote, start with some lyrics to kick us off and put us into the first piece of our musical differences or musical similarities, I should say, kind of conversation. The lyrics are, a long time ago, I can still remember how that music used to make me smile. I'm assuming you know, absolutely, possibly one of the most stunning songs. I've heard it again, oddly enough, last week. But take that, a long time ago, I can still remember how that music used to make me smile. So I'm just kind of interested here. Early memories of music, doesn't have to be the first time you recall hearing something, but, do you remember what are some of the most memorable occasions when music, made an impact on you?
Well, I was very lucky in that I grew up in a house of, I have 8 siblings, 7 of whom are older than me.
Right.
So they were very keen on music. My very first musical memory is Telstar.
Oh, kidding.
No, that's the one. Apparently, I used
Right.
to rock my cot to
I don't know if it.
Telstar.
I believe it's one of Margaret Thatcher's favourite tunes. I don't know if we ever heard that one.
I'm not saying it's a favorite, but it's my earliest musical memory.
Well. That's Joe Meek. You remember? I don't know if you ever followed up on Joe Meek, the producer. Very crazy character, actually. Might be worth. There's a very good book.
Joe
And that was
Meek.
recorded. Joe Meek, Joe
Yeah,
Meek, and that was
yeah.
recorded on the Holloway Road. And there's like a shop up towards the archway, up on the first floor. That's where Telstar, which was a worldwide hit, by the way,
Yes,
worldwide, because it was at the
yes.
same time as Sputnik.
I used to sing
Um,
it. I used to sing it as a toddler, apparently.
right.
I was very lucky. I regard myself as being exceptionally lucky because my third eldest sister was a Beatlemaniac.
Right.
Started in 1963, and so I was exposed to the Beatles non-stop from the age of 63. I would have been 4.
Yeah.
So my love affair with the Beatles started then.
How old was
Um,
she?
what is she
How old was
now?
she then? How many
Yeah,
years older?
I'm trying to work it out. She's probably 9 years older than me.
Right. Okay.
Eight,
So
9 years. Was I, May? 13, 14.
right.
She, the Beatles, if you fly into Dublin Airport now, you'll see there's great big photographs as you walk from the plane through the corridor. And one of them is the
Yeah.
Beatles arriving in Dublin in, it was either 63 or might have been 64,
Right.
actually. And she got into terrible trouble at the convent school because herself and a friend queued up overnight to get the tickets and went to see the Beatles.
Amazing.
I know. How jealous am I? So
Yes.
the
Yeah.
Beatles were constantly playing.
Right.
The other sisters were very keen on. They weren't Beatlemaniacs, but they were pretty keen on them. But they used to buy 45s, so there was all the Rolling Stones and the Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick and Titch, and the Dave Clark Five, and the blah blah blah.
But were you
So
buying them? That's or were they? What was your first single then? Do you remember the first
on my
single,
very
first
first one,
album?
yeah, first single was All Kinds of Everything by Donna.
Well done for owning up to that.
Yeah.
But again, she was the Irish. Did they win that year? Probably she did win it as well, did she?
Yeah, it was either 67 or 68. And
Right,
I counted up my pennies and went to the shop and bought the single.
right.
Yes.
Do you remember how much?
I think
50p?
No, I think, well, not far off. I think it was 8 shillings or seven
Right, right.
shillings and whatever, because that was
Yeah,
before decimalization.
you're right.
And I had them all saved up from washing the car or whatever I did to earn pennies. My first album, a little bit more street cred, was Electric Warrior, uh,
Wow.
T-Rex, obviously. Um,
There must have been
because
a
the
transition There must have been a few other singles after Dana before
Yeah,
getting the first LP.
I bought Tumbling Dice, the Rolling Stones,
Right,
and oh, I can't remember a few
right.
others. But I kind of transitioned from so my the Beatlemania thing burnt out with that particular sister,
Yeah.
and so there's a bit of a gap. There was a bit of a gap in my Beatle exposure. So I think she lost interest after Rubber Soul. So Revolver was almost a new listen to me, probably in the 70s or 80s,
Right.
which is quite interesting. But then my eldest brother uh, started to associate with some people who were really keen on all sorts of music, and so Sergeant Pepper's and Abbey Road and such like came in, and that's when the love affair with Abbey Road started.
What was the
Um,
age difference between you and the elder brother you mentioned there then?
yeah, probably 6 years.
Yeah, because I've got an older brother, younger brother. I don't have any real musical connection. I don't think of my younger brother, some, but not much. But my older brother, hugely influential, 3 years older than me, and it put a few pieces of music in front of me that effectively took me off in those various
Yep.
directions. The trajectory of my musical interest and appreciation was hugely impacted there. So I didn't go T Rex. He was T Rex. You were T Rex. Could you? What about Slade at the same time, or were they?
It was kind of one or the other, really.
Yes, it was.
I quite liked Slade, but they didn't have whatever it was I was looking for at the time. Um, my sense is, Slade are pretty mainstream, much more hard rock. Than because T Rex came from Tyrannosaurus Rex, all that kind of folky nonsense.
They
Uh,
were, but then a bit
yeah,
androgynous as well, wasn't he? Much
bit of
more
drudge.
so. There
Well,
was
that's
a
true.
little bit
Yeah,
of
yeah,
a bit
yeah,
of gender bending going on with
yeah. Are you
Mark
allowed to say
Bolan.
that these days?
I think you can. Actually, I think you're gonna. I think you'd have to lead with it. I think that'd be, that we should have been waving a flag. But it was him at Bowie as well. There was a little bit of that, I think, within Slade. But I would agree with you. Have you ever heard Slade alive? I think I've talked to you before about that
You
album.
have, and it's on my list. I've never actively listened to it, but I will do. I mean, in terms of live albums, I don't even like the band, but Who Live at Leeds is
Uh,
just stunning, stunning album.
I only bought it a few years ago. I was never really into the Who, and
No,
I had a revelation actually during lockdown with Tommy. I've got a really nice 1970s copy of Tommy, and I was stunned with that. It is a extraordinary piece of music. But I think with Who Live at Least, I don't know. I found Pete Townshend's talk with the audience getting a little bit strange and a little.
well, he has form on that, hasn't he?
I was just saying that there was parts of it. Now that we know what's happened since, it kind of. I can't remember. Ivor the Engine Driver, is it? I think there's.
But the big thing that my brother introduced me to, and he's a music fan, but not an obsessive music fan. It's not kind of oxygen to him. It's something
Right.
in his life. Um, the big thing was Led Zeppelin 2 when he brought a copy of that into the house. That was just revelatory. I think
Yes, I
it's the
bet.
absolutely astonishing album, and I was probably 10 or 11 at the time when
Oh,
I first heard that, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And in fact, the I had this enormous dilemma when I was buying my first album because I was in the record shop. I could only afford the one,
mm,
and it was either T Rex or Led Zeppelin 4.
right.
I
I'm not a
know.
hit. So which one's Zeppelin 4? Is that the one with the old man with the sticks on his back? Is that Zeppelin 4? No, or is it?
I think so. That's the one with Stairway to
Let's stay
Heaven
with
and all that.
right.
You
Okay,
know.
okay. So odd to think, but undoubtedly the case that it would have made a major difference in your life if you'd have chosen one over the other. To be honest with you, if you think that, as I said, that would have taken you off in a perhaps in a different trajectory. But if your brother was buying Led Zeppelin albums, probably best to let him buy them, and you could borrow them or use them. I don't know if were you allowed to play his records?
Yes, yes,
Right,
because I had many more records at that stage than anybody else in the
right,
house.
right.
Because I was spending everything on, whatever I got, I was buying albums with.
And what
Uh,
did you play them on, Ed? It's in did you was it because this is back, if you're talking 60s, it might have been a little mono record player that
well,
might have
this
been
is
in your
early
living room or
70s.
right.
This would be early 70s now. Well, actually, the Zeppelin 2, you're right, that would have been late 60s, I suppose, or maybe 1970.
Yeah,
We had one of those, the integrated gramophone things.
I do. One of those, a big
Yeah,
wooden unit. I mean, one of
big
those.
wooden
But
unit
but it's
thing.
in the
Yeah,
family room though, isn't it? It was in the
yeah,
living
yeah,
room or the front room or the
yeah,
parlor, as it might have been,
yeah.
maybe.
So you had to time slice when
Right.
you actually got to listen to it.
Yes.
Um, we then actually, this is where again my brother was very influential because he's much more technical than I am, and so he and I got some money together, and he selected a separate system with a
Right.
Rotel amp and some other deck and some speakers and what have you. So that was a proper hi-fi system uh, back in the day, as it were. Um,
In the same room as the TV or in a separate room so you could
no, it was in what we call the breakfast room. So it was kind of, yeah, it was beside the kitchen. So that room tended to be free uh, in the evenings,
right.
actually. Yeah. And I think the rest of the family were quite tolerant, actually, of the stuff I was playing. Because I went from Zeppelin to, then I discovered King Crimson, and I devoured everything I could find. And that's hardly family tea time
Yeah,
music.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Red in particular, I find. Well, I say
Red in
most of their stuff.
particular.
That's
Yeah,
very rowdy,
yeah,
aggressive. I don't know whether that's the right word to describe it. I really like it,
yeah,
but it's kind of violent or orally, orally. I mean, yeah, it's
absolutely.
in
Yeah,
places. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and things like logs, tongues, and aspic, where it starts off quiet and then it builds to this massive crescendo on the title track.
I don't
And
know that album. I do know of it, but I've never heard it.
it's wonderful. Wonderful.
Islands? Have you got islands? I like.
Yes, yes, islands and the what was the other one? Oh, lots of them, lots of them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Lark's Tongue in Aspic was the first King Crimson album that I got obsessed with, followed up by Red, and they're very different, but both fascinating. And
And you
he's
went to see King
still,
Crimson a couple of years ago, I think, didn't you? Or was it
yeah,
last year, maybe?
yeah, it was very good actually. At the it's probably 3 or 4 years ago actually.
I think I had a ticket to go and see it with you, but for some reason wasn't able to come. But
I think
that
you
was
didn't.
my
You
you
didn't
what?
show up. You didn't show up
Did
for
I get
some
the date
reason.
wrong or something? Did I? It could have happened that way. Although I have seen Robert Fripp, but it was a few weeks ago in Swansea when he was doing his tour with with Toyo Wilcox. So he was playing and he was nattering in between some of the songs, but they didn't play one. Didn't play one King Crimson number, which I was surprised
Right.
at. Played
Yeah.
virtually everything else that or a lot of the stuff that he'd been associated with Bowie's Heroes and other tracks, but no King Crimson. It must have been the agreement that it was made. I would have thought, but
I don't know. It's a big back catalogue, and
mm,
they're constantly held up as the kind of godfathers of progressive rock. Whether who cares about those sort of things? But each album, when when you buy a King Crimson album, you know you got to invest a considerable amount of time to get to like it,
Mm.
and then get to love it. It's what I always felt. It's a labor of love. But
Cheers.
alongside that, I got hooked on David Bowie. My best mate at school had the whole Bowie haircut when it wasn't cool certainly in Catholic Ireland, to dress like that.
Well,
Uh,
remember it. I've got the Bowie. I've got the Bowie eyes as well in some
that's
respects. Yeah,
true.
but for some reason it doesn't seem to look as good on me as it does on him. Not quite sure why, but there we are. And I
Yeah.
was ginger as a kid, so
Yeah.
you,
Right.
you think okay. So what about? And one of the questions was kind of top three albums, but it's terrible to actually try and force people into, what are the top three albums of all time. So I'm just going to spread that out a bit and say, so they don't have to be the top three, because you would probably, unless you've thought about it a long time, you'd probably just change your mind bit by bit by bit. But three of, as far as you're concerned, the best albums in existence in your life in many respects. Just three of the best. What would you say?
Yeah, so the struggle for me is that I often go off on segues, sometimes for months, into completely different types of music.
Yes, yeah.
So I spent about 6 months listening to Bach piano stuff.
Yes.
Um, and then I spent a lot of time, as you know, listening to jazz. And then I spent a lot of time listening to Scandinavian jazz, um, and kind of losing myself and not listening to anything else for long periods of time. Um, but Abbey Road would have to be in that collection. But then I kind of think, well, Sergeant Pepper's would have to be in there as
Yeah.
well. So I'd have to have both of them. Uh, this one here, which I was only listening to this morning, would definitely be
Is it, oh,
Keith
Keith Jarrett?
Keith Jarrett, the
Ah,
Cologne
right.
concert.
Okay. So when you
Yeah,
say Scandinavian jazz, do you mean is that what you mean, or do you mean jazz played in Scandinavia, or sorry, is yes, or because he's an American artist, I think, isn't he, Keith
he is
Jarrett? I
American. Yes, he
assume,
is.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I've
But
you said you've
he did a lot of stuff with Jan Garbarek, who is Norwegian, I think, and his stuff is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. The Esbjorn Svensson trio are just, they almost became mainstream before he unfortunately died in a diving accident.
hmm.
Um, but their live stuff is phenomenal, just brilliant. Pat Metheny, obviously, is. But anyway, I've gone off the track. Three, and then of
Because didn't
course,
we? Was it me and you that went to see Pat Metheny, and we were we were about 4 feet away from him? Was it
yeah,
me? I can't
yeah, yeah,
remember. And I
yeah, I've
think
been there.
I'm ashamed to say I was eating burger and chips, at Ronnie Scott's, because it is, you're on the floor in that brilliant venue. It is
Yeah,
the best. But it was,
Donny.
we were table number one, really, weren't we? It was just
Yeah, yeah,
sitting there in front of Pat.
yeah.
A flawless performance.
He's a
It's
magician.
extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in the front row at the Hammersmith Apollo or whatever they call it, to see him a few years back.
Hmm.
To see the Pat Metheny band, Pat Metheny group. Sorry,
I think I might have
and
been there with you on that too, hasn't I? We've seen him a
that was
few times together.
well, we've seen him there, but I was with Belinda right at the front, the
Right.
very, very front seat,
Well, yeah.
and it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. Um, there's a lot of kind of mainstream rock music that I love, like Counting Crows,
Hmm.
all the Radiohead stuff, blah blah blah. It's difficult to pick a small number of.
I would say just a few of those. There's Counting Crows. I've got no insight into at all, other than didn't they have one or two top 20 hits or whatever? Is it something about the weather? Take the weather with you. But I believe they are highly regarded, aren't they? But I mean, is it a
Their first album is astonishing,
right?
August and Everything. It's just unbelievable, that as a first album. Um, it's very American,
They're
but
Australian though,
it's
aren't they?
no, they're American.
Oh, are
It's
they?
yeah, and his ability, Adam, I can never remember his second name. His ability to wrap a story into a song is just really lovely, really lovely. The first album is fantastic. The rest of them are pretty good. There's highlights. I've seen them a couple of times actually. The first time I was so disappointed. I saw them in that dreadful venue in Birmingham. Is it
NEC?
the NEC maybe?
Yeah.
You know, it's this, the acoustics are appalling, and
Yeah.
there was no atmosphere, and they clearly didn't want to be there. And then I saw them somewhere else, and they were brilliant. Um, I'd love to see Radiohead. I think, but again, you know, you have to enter into their moody old world when
Mm.
you listen to
Mm.
Radiohead, don't
Oh
you?
yeah, I saw them at the O2. Maybe. Oh, thinking about it, might have been maybe 6, 7, or 8 years ago. Um, it was just real luck. I was in Stansted Airport, sitting down having a coffee in the Costa Coffee or Cafe Nero and
Yeah,
in Stansted. You probably know. And I saw a guy sitting at the table next to me, kind of clearly, watching his watch, watching for the time or something. And I kind of looked over, and it was Radiohead tickets would be were coming available at
right.
9 o'clock. Saw what he
Yeah,
was doing. I thought, oh, hang on a second, I'll give that a go. And I got two tickets. I can't remember can't remember something about the moon or whatever the tour was. Didn't know
yeah.
any. Uh, what?
Moon shaped balloon.
Right. I didn't know it. Is that it? I did not know. Didn't know the whatever they played on the night. I hadn't heard any of it before. It was
Right.
fantastic. But I've got a lot of.
Yeah.
I've got the OK Computer, the Bends. I love the Bends. But I do find them. It's odd. We had a conversation the other day. I remember Edward mentioned the kind of positive psychology and kind of what you feed in.
Yeah.
Interesting. Then, what on the musical side, I always found Radiohead. He does have the most melancholic
Absolutely.
voice. It's extraordinary. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But there's I don't know whether there is a lot of pain and suffering there. But I'd
Well,
say
they're
he
off.
sings like an angel at times.
Yeah, their offshoot band, The Smile. I don't know if you've heard
Yeah.
any of that.
I saw something the other day online about it. And what is it? Is it any
It's a
good?
new album. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is their second album, and they're just touring at the minute. But clearly, all the tickets have gone. Uh, but it's very ethereal type music,
Right.
beautifully produced, lovely, lovely stuff.
Right.
Melancholy is a good word too, but there are, going back to psychology, there are a number of studies that show that listening to sad music actually improves your mood. Work that one out.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not too sure
yeah.
on that. I'm just again. I say.
Well, listening to
Um,
happy songs can often put you in a bad mood, you know. I, I,
I've not had that.
I could do.
It's oh well, that's not a happy song. That's just awful. That's just as I said, I was out jive walking this morning, and I think it might have been Candy Dulfer came on and on the playlist. I'm just trying to think what the track was. But anyway, that came on, and immediately it's a cover version of Pick Up the Pieces. And
Yeah.
you can't,
And they're touring as well. The Average
uh,
White Band.
oh, aren't they two average? Are they two average white bands now? I think they may be, isn't it?
Probably several.
Yeah, I have
Well, you
seen.
have to
I'm
take the
sure
average of all the average white bands to
I've
get
seen them
this.
once at Ronnie's as well.
Yeah.
So I might have to check that out again. So
So yeah, but
anyway, I'm just trying to
name
think.
another song by the Average White Band.
Cut the cake. Isn't that is that is that the title of another average? It is.
I've no
I have
idea.
two. I have two average white band. I definitely have two average white band songs on my playlist for
Yeah, but
Jive
then,
Walking. I'm
talking
gonna
about
see if Cut the Cake.
influences,
You are.
if you talk about influences, you talk about older brothers and sisters, friends, and all the rest of it.
Yes.
My children have influenced a lot of what I listen to. So I got into all that new metal stuff.
Ooh.
The Offspring and of course Metallica. not new metal, but all of that kind of stuff.
They've been around about 35 years.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, loads of that kind of
What else?
stuff.
I
They
don't
used to
know new metal. You don't mean the kind of Cookie Monster kind of stuff, do you?
some of
With
the
the
Cookie Monster stuff, the Deftones,
oh, I
for
don't know.
instance.
No,
Yeah, I mean they're quite hardcore, noisy bands. Um, but we used to listen to loads of that stuff uh, because they were listening to it, and it was in the car if I was driving them around. They'd say, put on this mixtape or that
right?
mixtape. So I quite got into it. And then I used to take them off to the Reading and Leeds festivals every
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
And, the headliners would always be kind of mainstream people. I even saw Morrissey at one point, God
right,
help me.
right.
Uh, Blur and all those people played at.
Lovely to have that connection though with I got three children. I got a little bit of musical connection with all of them, but Katie, my middle child, if you remember, she came to see Kate Bush with us. So Robert came to
Yes.
that with you, didn't he? So
Yep.
that was, I
Yep.
find it, and I think she's got, I think she's got great music taste because much of it, I must be a big influencer on her in many ways. But she got much broader perspective because she takes in a lot more female artists. I did
Yep.
so the reason I mentioned American Pie. So what I did here, I went to a Burns night dinner last Friday night, and the people who were organising there said, "Oh, Mark, can you do like a sing along at the end of the night?" I was just like, "No, I'm not Mrs. Mills. I'm not going to be on the on the piano." I said, "Look, what I'll do if you've got half an hour you want to fill at the end of the night," I said, "I'll put together a playlist of songs that I think know my audience. I know the people who
Yep.
are there, the
Yep.
stuff that they'll sing along to. You know what I mean? But they
Yeah.
said put some lyrics. There's no point. The chorus is what they would sing to. But when I put it together, I just checked it off with Wendy and the girls. So for it, let me just we got. I'm going to be 500 miles. That is a great song, by the way, isn't it? The Proclaimers. Can't
Yeah.
take my eyes off you with Andy Williams. I said Brown Eyed Girl, American Pie, Lily the Pink. Just trying to think what else before we ended up. That's Amore.
That was Paul McCartney's brother, wasn't it?
And is Paul McCartney's brother. So there's a whole bunch of things. That's Amore. Please Release Me, Delilah, and then we finished on Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. But then Katie turned around and she said, "There's no women in there."
Oh dear.
And she's kind of right. But
Yeah.
Kate Bush is possibly the only exception. I can listen to a little bit of Patti Smith. Listen, I'm not. It's not. It's not if I don't. I can like Walk Like an Egyptian by the Bangles. I can like Denis Denis. I can like a future, but I haven't often indulged. I think I've got some Carole King. I'm just trying to think. If we went through my record collection, there's not going to be many female artists.
You weren't taken by the Cranberries, were you?
No,
That
and you like
single
them, don't
time.
you?
Oh, I love
Yeah,
the Cranberries. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
quite. She's got a cute little
Yeah.
voice and very catchy.
Yeah.
But they're Irish again, aren't they? So
Yes.
you may be just influenced on.
I think I'm
Do you like the
biased there. Yeah.
Cause? Do you like the Cause as
No,
well?
no, no, no. Too saccharine for me.
Okay,
Um,
I mentioned Irish. Where are you on U2?
I love U2.
You
Yeah, I'm a
do,
big fan. Always have
right?
been.
Right?
I think Bono, being Bono, he's larger than life. He takes a lot of flack, but I don't think you can take away from what they do, which is stadium rock at its best. I think they're
Yeah.
very, very good at it. Put on a great show. Their songwriting skills are, you might say, it's pretty adult orientated
Yes.
rock at
Yes.
its pinnacle, but it's great stuff filled with passion. So you won't get me to say a bad word about them.
Well, I say, yes, perhaps bashing U2 and bashing Bono in particular might be a bit of a pastime for many.
Yeah,
He's not my favorite in many sense, but I did say, is it Blood Under a Blood Red Sky? I think I had
Under a
that. And
Blood Red Sky. Yeah,
that's about 1986, I think,
yeah,
and that
that's an old one.
but that was. yeah, but very distinct of its time as well. They carved out their own niche. Where I think maybe they've had such an effect, such an impact on music. Nowadays, they just kind of sound, and they've done. I think their best. I think their best is behind them, but we might say that for all of us, Ed. But I think I don't think what they do now is probably of much.
Yeah, I mean, there's a strong argument to say that all musicians should be kind of put out to pasture once they've done their 20 years or whatever it is, because there aren't many that produce their best in the latter stages of their career.
Well, they just
Um,
repeat what they've done, and but the challenge is that they take all the money. They basically they're
they
taking
suck it
all of
out
the
of
air
the,
out of the room,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah,
I just I just got tickets. We're going to see the Eagles with Steely Dan in
yeah,
support. They
yeah.
know their audience. They can charge the tickets there, by the way, are £150, but up to about £500 or £600. Um, but that's, I think, they're able to do quite nicely for themselves. All the big stadium bands can tour, whatever else, but there doesn't seem to be much coming up behind
Well,
them.
you got
There's no
Bob Dylan.
infrastructure there.
You got Bob Dylan still touring. I mean, what is going on there? Because he hasn't got a note. He can hardly speak. Um, I mean, uh, he's his back catalogue is stunning. Blood on the
Yes.
Tracks would definitely be in
Is
any
that there?
top
Is it?
10, any top 10 that I put together. Um, it's just phenomenal,
Well, we went
just
to see him a few
phenomenal.
years ago,
Well,
maybe 10 years ago, wasn't it, in Finsbury Park, I remember. And we went,
yeah,
and I remember reading a review of that in some newspaper, and it said he sounded. This is back in the day. Do you remember when we used to have the Tom Tom sat navs? But it said he sounded like a wasp trapped in a Tom Tom sat nav, and which you can. I thought it was a great description. As it's
yeah, but
getting stuck with me.
he had a great band.
I would have gone to see him last year. He played the Palladium,
Oh, he
and
did
I
it
would
with the
have if
piano
I
and
yeah
whatever.
if I
Yeah,
got a ticket for that, I would have very much
yeah,
liked to have seen
yeah,
that. I saw Roger Waters at the Palladium
yeah.
last year doing his redux of Dark Side of the Moon, and again fantastically. We were about 5 rows back, smack bang in the centre, and
Nice.
he spent the whole night on his feet. He didn't play any bass at all. I don't think he stood centre stage with a pink velvet jacket on, and I went on the second night, which is good. The previous night, he'd spent about an hour reading passages out of his soon-to-be published autobiography, which supposedly got pretty negative reactions from some people in the audience. He
I've
cut it
never
down
been a
for us.
I've never been a big Pink Floyd fan. It's just never worked for me. I don't mind listening to them, but no, no. I've seen them. Yeah, I saw them at Earl's Court
Right.
the night the seats collapsed. Actually, uh, we were late getting there because we'd stopped at the pub or something, and when we walked in, people were coming out because they'd cancelled it because the whole row of seats had collapsed.
Oh, I think, what is this? Is it, when are you talking here? 1980 or much later? This is with Roger
Well,
Waters, Pink Floyd, is it?
no, no, it's before. It's
No,
after. This was
after,
in the
right?
night. This
Okay.
was the Division Bell tour.
No,
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah,
thank you. I say I am. I have most of the Floyd albums here.
yeah.
I know people that actually Dark Side of the Moon is the is the center of the universe
The
for
Second
them.
Coming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like it. I like it. I got numerous, versions and reissues of it or whatever. But I think I like The Wall. I like Dark Side of the Moon, and I like Wish You Were Here. I think Animals I like as well. But you could probably leave those are, and saying that say yes, The Wall, and then the one that came after that, which is I can't remember, but the last album they did with Roger Waters. Beyond that, no, kind of lost it for me there. But as I said, I'm amazed. It's interesting though, as you said, you've touched upon Zeppelin, King Crimson, Deep Purple.
yeah. I quite liked them. What was that first one they had that got to number two? Because I was big into the charts back in
Would it be
those days,
Black
as I'm
Knight?
sure
Maybe would have
Black
been
Knight.
Black
That's
Knight
it.
was
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But
And
that was
Strange Kind of
recorded.
Woman.
Right, right. But I think
Uh,
the other lovely thing on this, say Black Knight, recorded, I think, at Delane Lee Studios in London. Do you know Central London? Do you know you know Holborn? You know, come out of
Yeah,
Holborn Station. Do you
yeah,
know it?
yeah,
Holborn
yeah,
Station. You go down Aldwych. Yeah, you come out of Holborn Station. Right opposite you now, there's a Sainsbury's on the corner. That used to
yeah.
be Delane Lee Studios. That's where Black Knight was recorded. It's where I'm just trying to think some of the early Hendrix singles and everything.
Yeah, right.
I
Yeah.
get, I get, I get, and I've got it again now. I get literally tingles at the back of my neck just thinking about. Have you ever been to Abbey Road?
No, no.
Put yourself on the Abbey Road mailing
Yeah, I
list.
remember you saying that.
I have been twice, Ed.
Yeah, yeah,
It depends on what they. The first time I went was the better event because you were allowed in. They had Studio 1, 2, and 3. They just had a whole load of musical equipment out on the floor for
yeah,
you to be able to go in and have a look at. And although you
yeah.
were taken in kind of, every 15 minutes, there was another 20 people going in, you could stay in it all day if you wanted to.
Right.
But you could go right through the place. It's extraordinary. You've seen, the early Beatles photographs of them in Studio 2 in that
Yeah.
corner, just to go and stand there. I've also been, I don't know whether you ever, I did go to, I went to, did some work in the US and went to Nashville. Sorry, from Nashville, went to Memphis. Did go to Elvis's house, Graceland's. Not too bothered there, but went to Sun Studios.
Yeah, right.
And Sun Studios, you go in the
Yeah.
room and they play. I think it's Heartbreak, or it's like and there's a cross on the ground, sellotape. You know what I mean? It's just like that's
This is
where he
where he
stood,
stood.
and here's it's just like so. And we'll finish off and say on. I know you've got a guitar behind you. I have numerous guitars behind me here, and clearly, as I said, your love for music eventually led you to wanting to learn to perform and play music. But how close have you got to where you wanted to be on as a guitar player?
Oh, I think early recognition that I was never going to be on the stage. I think that was really helpful for me. So I got a guitar, I think, for Christmas when I was 10 or something
Did
like
you?
that. Yeah. Now, bear in mind, as I said earlier, I was a long way down in the family, and all the elder ones got piano lessons and such like. Uh, but my mum had given up by the time she got to me, so there was none of that. But I did get a guitar. I think I got an electric guitar when I was 15 or 16. Um, but, as you know, you got to put 10 hours a day into it to be really good.
Oh, do you
That
watch any
it's
Rick Beato? Have you seen Rick
Yeah,
Beato?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's fascinating, all that
There's the
stuff.
one that I just saw recently with this Italian guy. Have you seen this Matteo? Somebody is this new Italian young man plays like this, played with his right hand. So his father was a classical
No,
guitarist. His father played Spanish guitar.
yeah,
Well, it's just a different picking technique. Do you know what I mean? If you think Van
yeah.
Halen took it to a certain brought in kind of tapping and a new kind of technique, and I think he was a major, but this guy's playing again is extraordinary. So let's finish off here then. Favorite guitarists?
So, well, Pat Metheny, obviously, he's
Yes.
he's right up there. But I love blues guitar, electric blues. So Jimmy Page, obviously, Rory Gallagher,
Mm,
Stevie Ray Vaughan, all of those
right.
people. I love
Yeah.
all of that stuff. I like the people who played with Steely Dan, Larry Carlton,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
such like. I love
Yeah.
all that stuff. Um, any kind of screaming Gibson does it for me. I just
Yeah.
love all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Joe Bonamassa.
yeah, but he's okay. I've seen him a
Is it
couple of times. He doesn't
technically probably fantastic, but it doesn't kind of
doesn't
do it for me. It's not the
no
original article. Remember, as
no
the
Gary
it,
Moore.
more
Gary Moore, the sound he got, fantastic. I don't like Eric Clapton.
same here.
I think he's basically lazy. With all that talent, he could do so much more. And
Yeah.
he's so middle of the road with the stuff he
Yes.
does. He
Yes.
doesn't
Yes.
he doesn't he doesn't seem to experiment much at all.
I'll agree with you. I said I've had a few evenings here. It might have been during early lockdown as well. At one point, I got into the habit of on a Friday night just having a bottle of wine here and putting up a live DVD or whatever. There is, and Gary Moore live is. I just love the sweating. I just the sweating and his. It's you ever come up with this term physiognomy? You know the his physical expression whilst playing to me, and that's why I would. I mean, Pat Metheny also is very physically expressive. I mean, he's in his own little world a lot of the time, but he said, you know what I mean. Him and the guitar, they are as one. Some other players, it's like I don't know, they're kind of disconnected. But Gary Moore, when he's when he's got the amp on full and is I don't know whatever the track is, it's brilliant. I don't know if you've seen that DVD though. If you've not, it was the live in, I think it might, I don't know if it's Dublin or Belfast or something, but it was, and he gets the guy from, is it Eric Bell from he gets a few people from Thin Lizzy. They come up one after the other to play, but it's an Irish audience and it's fantastic. It's also fantastic to see the live audience like that, which is predominantly men. I say probably young, you know what I mean? Men in denim jackets. If you see photographs of Reading Rock Festival or something back in the 1980s, it's just all blokes like you and me, really, with long hair, spots,
and
denim jackets, but all tightly packed together. Not a mosh pit. You know what I mean? Not a mosh pit, but just tightly packed in some kind of homage, to the band on stage. So you get a good feel for that as well in this in that video. So look, let's you got any points where you think it's been a lovely chat.
First band I ever saw.
Which was?
Have a guess. And you'll never get it.
So
you'll never get it. Irish band, obviously.
Irish band, Horslips.
Yes, well done.
the book of Taliesin. I don't know. Is it the book of Taliesin or something?
Yeah.
I had a Horslips album, and so
Happy to Meet, Sorry to Part.
Really? Does it say that?
Yeah, Happy to Meet, Sorry to Part. That was
that's
their first album, I think.
I did not know that. Well, that is a Masonic saying, by the way. So whether there's a connection there, happy to meet, sorry to part, happy to meet again. I don't know whether they completed the.
They didn't complete it.
The part. Well, they maybe just did two parts, first and second only, but still interesting. And listen, the first gig for me, it was Uriah Heep, similar in some respects to Horslips. 1980, and I think a few weeks after that, Iron Maiden, which it was very few bands came to Swansea, so it was a case of, you got to go, I suppose.
Well, nobody went to Ireland in the old days, and in fact, the first famous artist I ever kind of shook hands with was Melanie, who died the other day.
She died the other day. I got it. What's a brand new key, wasn't it?
Yes, and look what they've done to my song.
Right.
And Ruby Tuesday.
And Ruby Tuesday with the right. Did she? Right.
Yeah,
Again, I only got. I'll just touch the Stones. I had ignored the Rolling Stones forever and a day, and then during lockdown, just one night, I've got a rolled gold. Double compilation, and for whatever reason, I just all put this on. Looked down the track listing. I didn't start at track one, side one. I thought I'll try. It was either side 2 or side 3. Put it on. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Because what they are, and the reason because I don't think a Rolling Stones album cuts it. There might be 2 good tracks. There's a lot of filler to me, whereas on the best of, it's just track after track after track. It is rolled gold. And Jumping Jack Flash being my favourite.
Yeah, Exile on Main Street, I think, works as an album.
Got that.
You don't get it.
I'll give it a go. Anyway, listen. Let's. Should we leave our chat there? It's been
it's been a
pleasure.
Great.
Yeah, having our say musical differences. My daughter clearly didn't get. What do you mean by musical differences? Is it just our age? But do you remember, when a band broke up, that was the usual why they broken up at musical difference. It had nothing to do with contractual reasons or financial or ego issues.
Well, they hated each other.
That's right. They couldn't be in the same room. They were travelling on tour in separate buses, staying in separate hotels.
Yeah.
But musical differences was the.
That's where people like Mike Oldfield score hands down. It's just him.
Correct. And I know you're a big Mike Oldfield fan too. We didn't touch upon that. Maybe we'll pick up on that next time, Ed. But in the meantime, I'm going to thank you very much for being here with us, and we'll speak again soon.
It's been a pleasure.